So we are on chapter, we are reading Many Lives, Many Masters by Dr. Brian Weiss. And we are on chapter 14, page number 120 of the book.
It is very hot where I am, she began. I see two black men standing near stone walls that are cold and damp. They have headpieces on. There is a rope around their right ankles. The rope is braided with beads and tassels coming off it. They are making a storage house out of stone and clay, putting wheat in it, some type of crushed grain. The grain is brought in a cart with iron wheels. Woven mats are on the cart or part of it. I see water, very blue. Someone in charge is giving the orders to the others. There are 3 steps down into the granary. There is a statue of a god on the outside. He has the head of an animal, a bird, and the body of a man. He is
so basically, again, it seems to be Egypt because that's where they had these kind of gods.
He is a god of the seasons. The walls are sealed with some sort of tar to prevent air from coming in and to keep the grain fresh. My face is itching. I see blue beads in my hair. There are bugs or flies around, making my face and hands itch. I put something sticky on my face to keep them away. It smells terrible, the sap from some tree. I have braids in my hair and beads in the braids with gold strings. My hair is dark black. I am a part of the royal household. I am there because of some feast. I have come to watch an anointing of priests, a festivity to the gods for the coming harvest. There are only animal sacrifices, no humans. Blood from the sacrificed animals run from a white stand into a basin. It runs into the mouth of a serpent. The men wear small gold hats. Everyone is dark-skinned. We have slaves from the other lands from across the sea.
So this also may be South America. I don't know.
She fell silent, and we were waiting as if the months had never passed. She seemed to become vigilant, listening to something. All is so fast and complicated. What they are telling me about change and growth and different planes. There is a plane of awareness and a plane of transition.
So again, she's gone into an altered state of consciousness and the masters are giving her information.
We come from one life, and if the lessons are completed, we move on to another dimension, another life. We must understand fully. If we do not, we are not allowed to pass on. We must repeat because we do not learn. We must experience from all sides. We must know the side of wanting, but also to give. There is so much to know, so many spirits involved. That is why we are here. The masters are just one on this plane.
So again, basically what have we come here to do? To learn, to grow. And we have to learn the full facet of the experience. So if I want to be slapped, I have to experience slapping also, right? Then only the experience is completed. So very clearly they are saying that we have come here to grow, and there are many different planes of consciousness, many different planes of existence, and everyone is looking to grow. That's it.
Catherine paused, then spoke with the voice of the poet master. He was speaking to me.
Shimangla, your voice is a little low today.
What we tell you is for now. You must now learn through your own intuition. After a few minutes, Catherine spoke in her soft whisper. There is a black fence within the tombstones. Yours is there. Mine, I asked, surprised at this vision. Yes. Can you read the inscription? The name is Noble, 1668 to 1724. There is a flower on it. It is in France or Russia. You were in a red uniform thrown from a horse. There is a gold ring with a lion's head. used as an insignia. There was no more. I interpreted the poet master's statement to mean there would be no more revelations through Catherine's hypnosis, and this was indeed the case. We were to have no further sessions. Her cure had been complete, and I had learned all that I could through the regressions. The rest, what lay in the future, I had to learn through my own intuition.
So again, as we go, become more expansive go into more expanded states, it's very much about intuitive abilities and a sense of knowing. And this is something that we find, when people are going into, say, focus 15 or into focus 21 or into 27, you're connected there, right? And then downloads start to happen. And the downloads start to become very profound. And that's where that intuitive ability starts to develop and come from.
Chapter 15. 2 months after our last session, Catherine called and scheduled an appointment. She said she had something very interesting to tell me. When she walked into the office, the presence of the new Catherine, happy, smiling, and radiating an inner peace that made her glow, briefly surprised me. For a moment, I thought about the old Catherine and how far she had come in such a very short time. Catherine had gone to see Iris Salzman, a well known psychic astrologer who specialized in past life readings. I was a little surprised, but I understood Catherine's curiosity and her need to seek some added confirmation for what she had experienced. I was glad she had the confidence to do this. Catherine had recently heard about Iris from a friend. She had called and made an appointment without telling Iris about anything that had transpired in my office. Iris had asked her only for the date, time, and place of her birth. From this, Iris explained to her she would construct an astrological wheel that, in conjunction with Iris's intuitive gifts, would enable her to discern details from Catherine's past lives. This was Catherine's first experience with a psychic, and she really didn't know what to expect. To her amazement, Iris validated most of what Catherine had discovered under hypnosis. Iris gradually worked herself into an altered state by talking and by making notations on the hastily constructed astrological graph. Minutes after she had entered this state, Iris reached for her own throat and announced that Catherine had been strangled and had had her throat cut in a previous life. The throat cutting had been in a time of war, and Iris could see flames and destruction in the village many centuries ago. She said that Catherine had been a young man at the time of his death. Iris's eyes appeared glazed as she next described Catherine as a young male dressed in a naval uniform, with short black pants and shoes with odd buckles on them. Suddenly, Iris grabbed her left hand and felt a throbbing pain, exclaiming that something sharp had entered and damaged the hand, leaving a permanent scar. There were large sea battles, and the location was off the English coast. She went on to describe a life of sailing. Iris described more fragments of lifetimes. There was a brief life in Paris where Catherine was again a boy and had died young in poverty. Another time, she was a female American Indian on the southwest Florida coast. During this lifetime, she was a healer and walked around barefoot. She was dark skinned and had odd eyes. She would apply ointments to wounds and give herbal medicines, and she was very psychic. She loved to wear blue stone jewelry, a lot of lapis with a red stone intertwined. In another lifetime, Catherine was Spanish and had lived as a prostitute. Her name began with the letter L. She lived with an older man. In another life, she was an illegitimate daughter of a wealthy father who had many titles. Iris saw the family crest on mugs in the large house. She said that Catherine was very fair and had long, tapering fingers. She played the harp. Her marriage was arranged. Catherine loved animals, especially horses, and she treated the animals better than the people around her. In a brief lifetime, she was a young Moroccan boy who died of an illness in his youth. Once, she lived in Haiti, speaking the language and involved in magical practices. In an ancient lifetime, she was Egyptian and was involved in the burial rites of that culture. She was a female with braided hair. She had several lifetimes in France and Italy. In one, she lived in Florence and was involved with religion. She later moved to Switzerland, where she was involved with a monastery. She was a female and had two sons. She was fond of gold and gold sculpture, and she wore a gold cross. In France, she had been imprisoned in a cold and dark place. In another life, Iris saw Catherine as a male in a red uniform involved with the horses and soldiers. The uniform was red and gold, probably Russian. In yet another lifetime, she was a Nubian slave in ancient Egypt. At one point, she was captured and thrown into jail. In still another life, Catherine was a male in Japan, involved with books and teaching, very scholarly. She worked with schools and lived to an old age.
So again, you can see that, she's had so many lives. So that is true for us also. So we've had all sorts of lives. So there's no point in hating someone, technically speaking, because in a previous life, you may have been that person only, or in that culture, or in that particular organization. So that's why criticizing anyone or anything is like faux pas, because if you're going to criticize, maybe you were in that organization at some point in time.
And finally, there was a more recent life as a German soldier who was killed in battle. I was fascinated by the detailed accuracy of these past life events as described by Iris. The correspondence to Catherine's own recall while under hypnotic regression was startling. Christian's hand injury while in the naval battle and the description of his clothes and shoes. Luisa's life as a Spanish prostitute, Aronda and the Egyptian burials, Johann the young raider whose throat was cut by a previous incarnation of Stuart, while Stuart's village had burned, Eric the doomed German pilot, and so on. There were also correspondences to Catherine's present life. For example, Catherine loved blue stone jewelry, especially lapis lazuli. She was not wearing any, however, during her reading with Iris. She had always loved animals, especially horses and cats, feeling safer with them than with people. And if she could pick one place in the world to visit, it would be Florence. By no means would I call this experience a valid scientific experiment. I had no way of controlling the variables, but it happened, and I think it is important to relate it here. I am not sure what occurred that day. Perhaps Iris unconsciously used telepathy and read Catherine's mind, since the past lifetimes were already in Catherine's subconscious. Or perhaps Iris really was able to discern past life information by the use of her psychic abilities. However it was done, the two of them obtained the same information by different means. What Catherine had arrived at through hypnotic regression, Iris had reached through psychic channels. Very few people would be able to do what Iris did. Many people who call themselves psychics are merely capitalizing on people's fears as well as their curiosity about the unknown. Today, psychic hacks and fakes seem to be coming out of the woodwork. The popularity of books such as Shirley MacLaine's Out on a Limb has brought forth a torrent of new trance mediums. Many rove around, advertising their presence locally, and they sit in a trance, telling an enraptured and awestruck audience such platitudes as, if you are not in harmony with nature, nature will not be in harmony with you. These pronouncements are usually intoned in a voice quite different from the medium's own, often tinged with a foreign accent of some sort. The messages are vague and applicable to a wide variety of people. Often, the messages deal principally with the spiritual dimensions, which are difficult to evaluate. It is important to weed out the false from the true so that the field is not discredited. Serious behavioral scientists are needed to do this important work. Psychiatrists are necessary to make diagnostic assessments to rule out mental illness, malingering, faking, and sociopathic conning tendencies. Statisticians, psychologists, and physicists are also vital for these evaluations and for further testing. The important strides that are going to be made in this field will be made using scientific methodology. In science, a hypothesis, which is a preliminary assumption made about a series of observations, is initially created to explain a phenomenon. From there, the hypothesis must be tested under controlled conditions. The results of these tests must be proved and replicated before a theory can be formed. Once the scientists have what they think is a sound theory, it must be tested again and again by other researchers, and the results should be the same. The detailed, scientifically acceptable studies of Dr. Joseph B. Ryan at Duke University, of Dr. Ian Stevenson at the University of Virginia, Department of Psychiatry, of Dr. Gertrude Schmeidler at the College of the City of New York, and of many other serious researchers prove that this can be done. Chapter 16. Almost 4 years have passed since Catherine and I shared this incredible experience. It has changed us both profoundly. On occasion, she drops into my office to say hello or to discuss a problem that she is having. She has never had the need nor the desire to be regressed again, either to deal with the symptom or to find out how new people in her life may have related to her in the past. Our work is done. Catherine is now free to fully enjoy her life, no longer crippled by her disabling symptoms. She has found a sense of happiness and contentment that she never thought was possible. She no longer fears illness or death. Life has a meaning and a purpose for her now, that she is balanced and in harmony with herself. She radiates an inner peace that many wish for, but few attain. She feels more spiritual. To Catherine, what has happened is all very real. She does not doubt the veracity of any of it, and she accepts it all as an integral part of who she is. She has no interest in pursuing the study of psychic phenomena, feeling that she knows in a way that cannot be learned from books or lectures. People who are dying or who have a family member dying often seek her out. They seem drawn to her. She sits and talks to them and they feel better.
So this is important. Someone who has actually experienced these things, people who have experienced these experiences always gravitate towards them because they find a very compassionate ear and someone who understands what they are going through.
My life has changed almost as drastically as Catherine's. I have become more intuitive, more aware of the hidden, secret parts of my patients, colleagues, and friends. I seem to know a great deal about them even before I should. My values and life goals have shifted to a more humanistic, less accumulative focus. Psychics, mediums, healers, and others appear in my life with increasing frequency, and I have started to systematically evaluate their abilities. Carol has developed along with me. She has become particularly skillful in death and dying counseling, and she now runs support groups for patients dying from AIDS.
So when we start visiting these altered states, and especially a person who's in proximity to people who he is taking into altered states, automatically the intuitive abilities will start to develop.
I have begun to meditate, something that, until recently, I thought only Hindus and Californians practiced. The lessons transmitted through Catherine have become a conscious part of my daily life, remembering the deeper meaning of life and of death as a natural part of life. I have become more patient, more empathic, more loving. I also feel more responsible for my actions, the negative as well as the lofty.
So
I have
again, becoming responsible, right? This is a shift which people who are who have had NDs or gone into these altered states, they automatically start becoming more responsible for their actions.
I know there will be a price to pay. What goes around truly does come around. I still write scientific papers, lecture at professional meetings, and run the Department of Psychiatry. But now I straddle two worlds: the phenomenal world of the five senses, represented by our bodies and physical needs, and the greater world of the non physical planes, represented by our souls and spirits.
So we need both, right? We are here for a particular function or a particular purpose, and the vehicle with which we achieve things is the physical body. So just thinking about dropping the body and not paying attention to the body, in my view, is not going to work, because this is your launch pad. The body is your launch pad. So you need to pay attention to your body as well as the other planes of existence.
I know that the worlds are connected, that all is energy, yet we often seem so far apart. My job is to connect the worlds, to carefully and scientifically document their unity. My family has flourished. Carol and Amy have turned out to have above average psychic abilities, and we playfully encourage the further development of these skills. Jordan has become a powerful, charismatic teenager, a natural leader. I am finally becoming less serious, and I sometimes have unusual dreams.
So again, most parents, right, most people, because they start getting scared of these abilities, they attempt to scuttle the children into expanding their abilities or expanding the qualities that they have, which is really unfortunate, because if children are trained from the beginning to become psychic, they can bring a lot of difference into this world.
During the several months after Catherine's last session, a peculiar tendency had begun to appear during my sleep. I would sometimes have a vivid dream during which I would either be listening to a lecture or asking questions of the lecturer. The teacher's name in the dream was Feeling. Upon awakening, I would sometimes remember some of the material discussed and jot it down.
So yeah, so again, there is something called the night school, right? When we are going into delta sleep at night, Robert Monroe said that you go to night school, and we are not aware that we are going to night school. In his out of body experiences, he describes it in his books. He actually visited these night schools And there were people who were aware that he was doing an out-of-body experience. That means that he was consciously aware as to where he was, but the others around him in the classrooms were not, right? So we all go into different states of consciousness at night and actually go there to learn stuff and then come back. Consciously, we don't know about it, but subconsciously, the information is always there.
I am including a few examples here. The first was a lecture, and I recognized the influence of the messages from the masters. Wisdom is achieved very slowly. This is because intellectual knowledge, easily acquired, must be transformed into emotional or subconscious knowledge. Once transformed, the imprint is permanent. Behavioral practice is the necessary catalyst of this reaction. Without action, the concept will wither and fade. Theoretical knowledge without practical application is not enough.
So again, we keep saying it in awareness. You have the knowledge, the information, and the practical experience. Unless you have both, it will never become wisdom.
Balance and harmony are neglected today, yet they are the foundations of wisdom. Everything is done to excess. People are overweight because they eat excessively. Joggers neglect aspects of themselves and others because they run excessively. People seem excessively mean. They drink too much, smoke too much, carouse too much or too little, talk too much without content, worry too much. There is too much black or white thinking, all or none. This is not the way of nature.
So again, logical mind, right? The logical mind will, the left brain will always think in black and white. It does not have a gestalt.
In nature, there is balance. Beasts destroy in small amounts. Ecological systems are not eliminated en masse. Plants are consumed and then grow. The sources of sustenance are dipped into and then replenished. The flower is enjoyed, the fruit eaten, the root preserved. Humankind has not learned about balance, let alone practiced it. It is guided by greed and ambition, steered by fear. In this way, it will eventually destroy itself. But nature will survive, at least the plants will.
So again, basically, when we are operating out of greed, we are operating on the left side of the grid, and no manifestation will take place from there. So ultimately, it will lead to destruction.
Happiness is really rooted in simplicity. The tendency to excessiveness in thought and actions diminishes happiness. Excesses cloud basic values. Religious people tell us that happiness comes from filling one's heart with love, from faith and hope, from practicing charity and dispensing kindness.
So if you'll see, all of these are in the right side of the grid.
They actually are right. Given those attitudes, balance and harmony usually follow. These are collectively a state of being. In these days, they are an altered state of consciousness. It is as if humankind were not in its natural state while on earth. It must reach an altered state in order to fill itself with love and charity and simplicity, to feel purity, to rid itself of its chronic fearfulness. How does one reach this altered state, this other value system? And once reached, how can it be sustained? The answer appears to be simple. It is the common denominator of all religions. Humankind is immortal, and what we are doing now is learning our lessons. We are all in school. It is so simple if you can believe in immortality.
So again, we are all in school. Also, Robert Monroe felt that this is the Earth life schooling system. We come here to learn our lessons and then we go on.
If a part of humankind is eternal and there is much evidence and history to think so, then why are we doing such bad things to ourselves? Why do we step on and over others for our personal gain when actually we are flunking the lesson? We all seem to be going to the same place ultimately, albeit at different speeds. No one is greater than another. Consider the lessons. Intellectually, the answers have been there, always been there. But this need to actualize by experience, to make the subconscious imprint permanent by emotionalizing and practicing the concept is the key. Memorizing in Sunday school is not good enough.
So again, when you are just doing something by route, right, it is not enough. You have to feel it. You have to add emotion to it. Only then the imprint is coming there. And the effect will then only be seen. So if someone is doing a jap or a prayer or a chant, but they're not feeling it, they're not really connecting with it, it is not going to give the effect that they are looking for.
Lip service without the behavior has no value. It is easy to read about or to talk about love and charity and faith. But to do it, to feel it, almost requires an altered state of consciousness.
So I know many people, they maintain a gratitude book and all that stuff, right? They're always writing, they'll do a gratitude list sharing every evening or every morning, but they're really not feeling it. They're just writing it. Better to get rid of that gratitude book because it is of no use. Unless you really feel the gratitude, it really doesn't make sense.
Not the transient states induced by drugs, alcohol, or unexpected emotion. The permanent state is reached by knowledge and understanding. It is sustained by physical behavior, by act and deed, by practice. It is taking something nearly mystical and transforming it to everyday familiarity by practice, making it a habit.
So again, you can't achieve these states of consciousness with drugs, right? It has to be achieved through your own means. Only then it is permanent and sustainable. And that's exactly what we are doing with the Monroe programs, right? You learn these states of consciousness and are able to get into them at will.
Understand that no one is greater than another. Feel it, practice, helping another. We are all rowing the same boat. If we don't pull together, our plants are going to be awfully lonely. On another night, in a different dream, I was asking a question. How is it that that you say all are equal, yet the obvious contradictions smack us in the face? Inequalities in virtues, temperances, finances, rights, abilities, and talents, intelligence, mathematical aptitude, ad infinitum? The answer was a metaphor. It is as if a large diamond were to be found inside each person. Picture a diamond a foot long. The diamond has 1,000 facets, but the facets are covered with dirt and tar. It is the job of the soul to clean each facet until the surface is brilliant and can reflect a rainbow of colors.
So basically, this is it, right? We are all here to clear ourselves. We are all here to clean ourselves of the garbage that we have been carrying. So again, karmic garbage, any action garbage, etc., etc. We need to shine. The more we can let go and still be in equanimity and still be present, the better and more spiritually evolved we become.
Now, some have cleaned many facets and gleam brightly. Others have only managed to clean a few. They do not sparkle so. Yet, underneath the dirt, each person possesses within his or her breast a brilliant diamond with 1,000 gleaming facets. The diamond is perfect, not one flaw. The only differences among people are the number of facets cleaned. But each diamond is the same, and each is perfect. When all the facets are cleaned and shining forth in a spectrum of lights, the diamond returns to the pure energy that it was originally. The lights remain. It is as if the process that goes into making the diamond is reversed. All that pressure released. The pure energy exists in the rainbow of lights, and the lights possess consciousness and knowledge. And all of the diamonds are perfect.
So
Sometimes
all of us are actually perfect, right? Everyone is perfect. We are just the perspective that we look at ourselves. That is what is imperfect.
when all the facets are cleaned and shining forth in a spectrum of lights, the diamond returns to the pure energy that it was originally. The light remains. It is as if the process that goes into making the diamond is reversed. All that pressure released. The pure energy exists in the rainbow of lights, and the light possesses consciousness and knowledge. And all of the diamonds are perfect. Sometimes the questions are complicated and the answers simple. What am I to do? I was asking in a dream. I know I can treat and heal people in pain. They come to me in numbers beyond what I can handle. I am so tired. Yet, can I say no when they are so needy and I can help them? Is it right to say, no, enough already? Your role is not to be a lifeguard, was the answer. The last example I will cite was a message to other psychiatrists. I awakened about 6 in the morning from a dream where I was giving a lecture, in this instance to a vast audience of psychiatrists. In the rush towards the medicalization of psychiatry, it is important that we do not abandon the traditional, albeit sometimes vague teachings of our profession. We are the ones who still talk to our patients patiently and with compassion. We still take the time to do this. We promote the conceptual understanding of illness, healing with understanding, and the induced discovery of self knowledge, rather than just with laser beams. We still use hope to heal. In this day and age, other branches of medicine are finding these traditional approaches to healing much too inefficient, time consuming, and unsubstantiated. They prefer technology to talk, computer generated blood chemistries to the personal physician patient chemistry, which heals the patient and provides satisfaction to the doctor. Idealistic, ethical, personally gratifying approaches to medicine lose ground to economic, efficient, insulating, and satisfaction destroying approaches. As a result, our colleagues feel increasingly isolated and depressed. The patients feel rushed and empty, uncared for. We should avoid being seduced by high technology. Rather, we should be the role models for our colleagues. We should demonstrate how patience, understanding, and compassion help both patient and physician. Taking more time to talk, to teach, to awaken hope and the expectation of recovery, these half forgotten qualities of the physician as healer, these we must always use ourselves and be an example to our fellow physicians.
So in the olden days, the doctor used to be a part of the village, and the doctor literally had given birth to maybe 3 or 4 generations, right? So they knew the family history, they knew, and they spent time with the family. Nowadays, if you see, doctors will just see the report, they'll tell you, go and make this report, bring it back, they'll see it for 2 minutes and give you the medicine. There's no personal interaction in most cases as far as doctors is concerned, and that's a huge loss that we have. actually created for ourselves.
We should avoid being seduced by high technology. Rather, we should be the role models for our colleagues. We should demonstrate how patience, understanding, and compassion help both patient and physician, taking more time to talk, to teach, to awaken hope and the expectation of recovery. These half forgotten qualities of the physician as healer, these we must always use ourselves and be an example to our fellow physicians. High technology is wonderful in research and to promote understanding of human illness and disease. It can be an invaluable clinical tool, but it can never replace those inherently personal characteristics and methods of the true physician. Psychiatry can be most dignified of the medical specialties. We are the teachers. We should not abandon this role for the sake of assimilation, especially not now. I still have such dreams, although only occasionally, often in meditation or sometimes while driving on the highway or even while daydreaming. Phrases and thoughts and visualizations will pop into my mind. These often seem very different from my conscious and usual way of thinking or conceptualizing. They are frequently very timely and solve questions or problems I am having. I use them in therapy and in my everyday life. I consider these phenomena to be an expansion of my intuitive abilities, and I am heartened by them. To me, they are signs that I am headed in the right direction, even if I have a long way to go.
So again, he's talking about the small guy and the big guy. Very clearly, he says, thoughts and visualizations will pop into my mind, right? That means he's not consciously thinking of it. So he's not thinking with the small guy. It's coming from the big guy. It's coming from below the line.
I listen to my dreams and intuitions. When I do, things seem to fall in place. When I do not, something invariably goes awry.
So again, we are talking about the four S's. The first tenant, swata. Things will automatically fall into place and it will be easy for us to do, right? And it will be for the greater good, provided we accept what is happening, right? So what he is very clearly stated here, that when he does not accept it, things go out of whack, right? Things don't work out.
I still feel the masters around me. I do not know for sure whether my dreams and intuitions are influenced by them, but I suspect so.
Absolutely, our dreams and intuitions are always affected by our masters and teachers.
Epilogue. The book is now completed, but the story goes on. Catherine remains cured without any recurrence of her original symptoms. I have been very careful about regressing other patients. I am guided by the patient's particular constellation of symptoms and by his or her refractoriness to other treatments, by the ability to be easily hypnotized, by the patient's openness to this approach, and by an intuitive feeling on my part that this is the path to take. Since Catherine, I have done detailed regressions to multiple past lives in a dozen more patients. None of these patients were psychotic, hallucinating, or experiencing multiple personalities. All improved dramatically.
Whenever we are taken into altered states, and especially when we are taken into these altered states which connect with different realities, automatically a big shift in how the person is behaving or being definitely takes place.
The 12 patients have widely disparate backgrounds and personalities. A Jewish housewife from Miami Beach vividly remembered being raped by a group of Roman soldiers in Palestine shortly after the death of Jesus. She ran a 19th century brothel in New Orleans, lived in a monastery in France in the Middle Ages, and had a distressing Japanese lifetime. She is the only one of the patients, other than Catherine, who could transmit messages back from the in between state. Her messages have been extremely psychic. She too knew facts and events from my past. She has even more of a facility for accurately predicting future events. Her messages come from a particular spirit, and I am currently in the process of carefully cataloguing her sessions. I am still the scientist. All of her material must be scrutinized, evaluated, and validated. The others were not able to remember much beyond now, leaving their bodies and floating to the bright light. None could transmit messages or thoughts back to me, but all had vivid memories of previous lifetimes. A brilliant stockbroker lived a pleasant but boring life in Victorian England. An artist was tortured during the Spanish Inquisition. A restaurant owner who could not drive over bridges or through tunnels remembered being buried alive in an ancient Near Eastern culture. A young physician recalled his trauma at sea when he was a Viking. A television executive was tormented 600 years ago in Florence. The list of patients goes on. These people remembered still other lifetimes as well. Symptoms resolved as the lifetimes unfolded. Each now firmly believes that he or she has lived before and will again. Their fear of death has diminished.
So this is a given, right? If we know that we are going into an altered reality and that reality is real, automatically, even if we leave the body, we still exist, right? So where's the fear of death?
It is not necessary that everyone has regression therapy or visits psychics or even meditates. Those with disabling or bothersome symptoms may choose to do so. For the rest, keeping an open mind is the most important task. Realize that life is more than meets the eye. Life goes beyond our five senses. Be receptive to new knowledge and to new experiences. Our task is to learn to become godlike through knowledge. I am no longer concerned with the effect this book may have on my career. The information that I have shared is far more important, and if heeded, will be far more beneficial to the world than anything I can do on an individual basis in my office. I hope that you will be helped by what you have read here, that your own fear of death has been diminished, and that the messages offered to you about the true meaning of life will free you to go about living yours to the fullest, seeking harmony and inner peace and reaching out in love to your fellow humans.
Beautiful. I think that's the end of this book. Shimla can stop the share. Great. So actually, there was not much explanation in this book. It's basically about getting into the altered state and getting into that state which can cause a healing in your current life because of the resonance that is there in, say, technically another life. From the Monroe perspective, getting into Focus 15, you can easily do this stuff. You can tap into any of these realities and you don't even have to experience the life. Okay, you just have to tap into it and then you can figure out, okay, this is the issue and it automatically starts to get solved. This has been my particular experience. Anyone, anything to say or add before we wrap up? So we finished this book.